So this is the introduction to assignment problems. And assignment problems are where you are assigning or choosing one person or one group to do a particular task. So each person can only be assigned one task, and one task has to be, every task has to be done. So it's possible to have people that are not chosen for tasks, but every task has to be done. And so what you can see here is a matrix that shows how long it would take each of these 5 workers to do each of these jobs, from shaping, assembling, painting, and inspecting. And what we have to do is choose. So this is what's called a binary problem because there are only 2 choices. Either they do this job or they don't do the job. So if you look at this, you might look at shaping and say, oh, worker 4 should do the shaping. But if you looked over here at inspecting, you'd also say worker 4 is the fastest at inspecting. So how do you choose? And we could go through and we could, try picking different people for each job and then look at it. But we can also let Solver help us make those choices. So the first thing we need to do is realize that all the blue cells here are all going to either have a 0 or a 1 in them. To say 0, don't do that job, 1, do the job. And so if you added this up for the worker 1, that's going to be less than or equal to 1 because you can only do one job. So for column F, I'm going to do equals sum, and then I'm just going to add all of these up. If it adds up to 0, that's fine because we do have one extra worker. If it adds up to 1, that's fine. If it adds up to more than 1, that doesn't work. And then I'm just going to fill that formula down right here. I'm going to do the same thing for each of the jobs, equals sum, and then add up the 4 numbers above it. And that one's got to equal 1 because we do have to do each of the jobs. We have to do shaping, we have to do assembling, etc. And then the last thing to set up the spreadsheet is to use sum product here. So it's going to multiply the time it takes times whether someone does it or not. So for instance, if we decided it was going to be like this, a worker 1 was going to shape, worker 2 was going to assemble, etc. It would take 10 minutes for worker 1 to do the shaping. It would take 9 minutes for worker 2 to do the assembling, 20 minutes for painting, 14 minutes for inspecting. And so we need to multiply the number of people doing something, which is either 1 or 0, times how long it takes them to do that. So I'm going to do equals sum product, and I'm going to take the top matrix, comma, the bottom matrix. And for example, if this was the answer, it'd take 53 minutes. Now we could, like I said earlier, we could play around. We could say, well, what if I want this person to do this job instead, and I want this person to do that job instead? Is that better? No, it's 55 minutes. That's worse. But we're going to let Solver figure out the right answer for us. So I'm going to go up to add-ons and open my Solver sidebar. Our objective is right here, total time, so I'll update that. But this time it's not to take the most, like profit times we were trying to make the most money. We want to take the least time, so we'll do that. The variable cells, we want the computer to change these blue cells to be 0s and 1s that tell us what the right answer is. And then our constraints. This column, column F, has to be less than or equal to column H. Row 15 has to not just be less than or equal, but be exactly equal to row 17. And then the last is that all of these blue cells have to be binary. They have to be 0s and 1s. So I'll update, and then I'll change this to binary and save that. And that will make sure that all the blue cells are either 0s or 1s. And then I'll solve it. And what the computer is going to do is try different numbers in each of those different boxes to figure out the effect of each one. and eventually it's going to come up with the correct answer. So this one does take a couple minutes to solve because there's so many options. And that's it. The fastest that could happen is if worker 4 does the shaping, worker 2 does the assembling, worker 1 is the painter, worker 5 inspects, and worker 3 is not assigned any jobs. So that's the intro to assignment problem.